The lights above the ballroom cut out for half a second, and that half second was the only warning anyone got. My name is Daniel Cole, and I was standing near the dessert table with a glass of something sparkling I hadn't paid for, wearing a jacket that didn't fit me right, when the first scream tore through the crowd. I had come to that gala only because I fixed a nobleman's shuttle engine for free, and he handed me a guest pass instead of payment. I was not supposed to be important that night. I was supposed to be invisible. 10 minutes earlier, I had made the mistake of speaking to her. Princess Lyra Vantos stood taller than most humans, with silver eyes and a gown that looked like it was woven from starlight. I did not approach her to flirt. I approached her because I recognized the design language stitched into the hem of her dress, a pattern that matched the cooling vents on Krillian starship hulls, and I said so. I told her it was beautiful engineering disguised as fashion. It was the only true compliment I had to give. She looked at me the way someone looks at a stain on a clean floor. "A human of your station does not address royalty," she said, loud enough for the nearby lords to hear. They laughed. I felt my face go hot, but I did not argue. I only nodded, stepped back, and let the crowd swallow me again. I noticed things while I stood there, quiet and stinging. Her guards were relaxed, too relaxed, standing in ceremonial poses instead of watching the exits. And underneath her cold expression, just for a moment, I saw something flicker that looked like fear, quickly hidden. Then the lights cut out. When they came back, 3 figures in dark cloaks were already moving through the crowd, and the ceremonial guards were reaching for weapons they clearly did not expect to use tonight. People screamed and scattered, waiters dropped trays, and Lyra, the princess who had just humiliated me in front of half the room, stood frozen in the open, exposed, with nothing between her and the nearest attacker but empty air. I did not think about the insult. I did not think about anything except the layout of that ballroom, because I had spent the last 10 minutes memorizing exits out of habit, the way you do when you grow up somewhere unsafe. I grabbed the nearest serving cart, flipped it onto its side, and shoved it toward her as a shield, while I ran low across the floor. I reached her, just as the first attacker raised a weapon, and I put myself between them, cart and body both, absorbing a shock that sent pain through my shoulder like fire. I did not have training. I had scrap metal instincts. I grabbed a fallen serving tray and swung it hard into the attacker's wrist, knocking the weapon loose, then used the confusion to yank a support cable from a nearby light fixture and short out the gravimeters along the wall. The room tilted for the attackers, just long enough for the real guards to recover and close in. My vision blurred. The last thing I remember is Lyra's silver eyes staring down at me, wide with something that was not contempt anymore, before everything went dark. I woke up in a bright medical bay with a dull ache in my shoulder and a strange humming sound in the walls. Lyra was sitting a few feet away, arms crossed, looking anywhere but at me. "You should not have done that," she said quietly. "You're welcome," I answered, and her jaw tightened like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Her father's envoy arrived not long after, a tall Krillian official with a voice like grinding stone, and he made an announcement that neither of us wanted. Since I had saved the princess's life, and since the attack pointed to a deeper conspiracy that had not yet been solved, I would serve as her personal bodyguard until the matter was resolved. Lyra looked like she had swallowed something bitter. I almost laughed, except my shoulder hurt too much. I did not take the job for pride. I took it because the pay would cover the debt on my grandmother's house before the bank took it, and because my sister Ellen needed tuition money I did not have. When Lyra asked me, arms still crossed, why a human would want such a demeaning position, I told her the truth. "It's not demeaning, it's a paycheck. My family needs it more than I need your approval." That answer seemed to bother her more than any flattery could have. The first week, she tested me without saying so. She changed her schedule without warning, walked into crowded markets without telling security, and dismissed every warning I gave her as human overcaution. I did not argue. I simply stayed close, watched everything, and did my job. When a caterer at a private dinner served a dish that smelled faintly wrong to me, sharp and slightly bitter beneath the spices, I stopped her hand before the fork reached her mouth. The kitchen staff later confirmed a toxin had been slipped into the sauce, something her scanners had failed to detect because it was organic, drawn from a plant Krillian technology did not recognize as a threat. She did not thank me out loud, but she stopped testing me after that. The second week, someone hacked a terminal she used daily, planting a listening device disguised as a translation module. I found it because the device ran slightly warm, warmer than it should have for its function, and warm metal against my palm was a language I understood from years of fixing broken machines in the Detroit ruins. I disabled it quietly and told her without making a show of it. She studied me for a long moment after that, like she was recalculating something in her head. By the third week, she started asking my opinion before making decisions, then pretending she hadn't. I noticed, but I never mentioned it. I went home every evening to Ellen and our grandmother Nora, ate dinner at our small kitchen table, and returned the next morning like nothing had changed. Because for me, nothing had. I was still the same person. I think that consistency confused her more than any charm could have. She was used to nobles who flattered her to gain favor. She did not know what to do with someone who simply showed up, did the work, and left without asking for anything more. The conspiracy came apart during a formal succession ceremony, 3 weeks after the gala. I had grown used to watching the room instead of the event, and that habit saved us both. I noticed Counselor Bray first, an older Krillian official who had stood beside Lyra's family for years, standing slightly too close to the ceremonial dais, his hand resting near a device clipped to his belt that did not belong to standard court dress. I had studied enough Krillian tech by then to recognize a weapon housing when I saw one. When Bray moved, it was fast, faster than I expected from someone his age, and he raised the device toward Lyra with a calm, practiced hand, as if he had planned this moment for a long time. I did not have a weapon. I had only what I always had, quick hands and a mechanic's understanding of how things break. I closed the distance and grabbed the device's casing before he could complete the sequence, twisting it hard enough to jam the internal mechanism, the same way I had jammed 100 stuck engine parts back home. It sparked and locked instead of firing. Bray shouted something in his own language, furious, and lunged toward Lyra with his bare hands instead. I stepped between them again, this time by choice, not chance, and held my ground until the royal guards finally reacted and pulled him back. The truth came out quickly after that. Bray had orchestrated both attacks, the first at the gala and the one at the ceremony, hoping to destabilize the succession and blame the failure on human incompetence, giving his allies an excuse to tighten control over Earth under the guise of protection. It was never really about Lyra. It was about using fear of humans to justify something much larger. Lyra stood in front of the full court afterward, her voice steady despite everything that had just happened, and she did something she had never done before. She said my full name, Daniel Cole, clearly and without hesitation, and told the room that a man from a poor and overlooked part of Earth had saved her life twice, while trained guards had failed. No one laughed this time. Later that night, after the court had cleared and the guards had taken Bray away, she found me near the balcony, where I had gone to breathe and let my hands stop shaking. She did not apologize in words. Krillian pride did not work that way, and I did not expect it to. Instead, she offered me something else. A permanent post among her personal court, wealth beyond anything I had ever imagined, more than enough to erase every debt my family carried for generations. I turned it down, gently, and asked for something smaller instead. Fair trade agreements for Earth's engineers. Recognition that humanity was not beneath the Empire's ladder, but simply new to it. She studied me for a long time before agreeing, and something in her expression had changed completely from the night she first looked at me like a stain on clean marble. She never called me poor again. From that night forward, Whenever someone asked who I was, she introduced me first by name, and only afterward mentioned that I came from Earth, as if my home was simply a detail, not a judgment. It was a small change, maybe invisible to anyone who had not seen where it started. But I noticed it every single time, and it meant more to me than any wealth she could have offered.